Well, good morning. Again, or morning. I tend to be a morning girl because I don't always assume that it was good. Especially getting little ones out of the house. I am honored to be here with you this morning, and some of the topic that I was asked to do or felt led to do is talk a little bit about grief. Grief makes us uncomfortable. So this may be a little bit heavy for some of you, but I promise I'll make you laugh at some point. Are we comfortable with grief? No. Yes. Head nod. Most of us are not. I kind of titled this as Good Grief, as in good grief. This is not fun, right? So let me share a little bit with you. So most people struggle to face things that cause them fear. When we are faced with someone else's grief, we are asked to look at pain that we would never want to experience ourselves. Yet we know somewhere deep down inside that we could be asked to walk this path. So most of us hide or we avoid this fear, this grief. We tell ourselves if we can keep the grief out of sight, if we refuse to utter words about it, maybe the grief won't see us. So we pretend that it's okay, or we bless it's hard enough that the sadness or the grief madness won't necessarily rub off on us. Besides, what would we say about grief? What do I say? What if I make it worse? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make them cry? So we're not comfortable with this thing. So let me share a little bit about one woman's story. So this woman comes from a divorced family. Her father abandoned her. She was sexually assaulted by an extended family member as a small child. She was assaulted a second time at the hands of a boyfriend in her teen years. She struggled with a chronic disease. She also struggled with depression. And she struggled with debilitating migraines. She attempted suicide at the age of 15, and she failed. She lost one of her best friends to drunk driving, comforted a close friend as her young sibling passed away in a tragic accident. She attended hospice and hospitals with two different friends as she watched their parents die of cancer. She got married at 20, and her once loving husband began verbally and emotionally abusing her. And this lasted for about 7 years. Her first pregnancy ended in miscarriage. 5 years later, she lost a baby boy who was stillborn at 39 weeks. She and her family experienced house fire and were displaced for months. Her husband lost his job and then lost his mother in a car accident with her child in the car. This boy is just now 7 years later starting trauma therapy. She watched her husband sink into a deep depression and become an alcoholic for about 5 years. Recently, her eldest son admitted to cutting himself just to feel something, anything. Her second son has the same debilitating migraines that she suffers and is struggling to make it to school most days. So I'm standing here in front of you today because of grief. I am this woman. And it actually took me by surprise as I looked back. I don't tend to do that much. And so it was overwhelming to take in the full scope of some of the things that I have experienced in my life. These are the hard parts. These are the parts that are laced with tears and with heartbreak and with loneliness. But please remember, what you just heard is only part of my story. I have also been loved and accepted by an awesome God. My soul has been rescued by Jesus. And I am a princess of the Most High God, and I am cherished by Him. He has never left me or forsaken me, and I have been sustained by prayer and song and reading the Bible and by community. I have hope in the fact that the Bible says in Revelation 21:4, it says, He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things will be gone forever. So with that being said, I hope that you will hear me out from what I share, that I don't share just out of book knowledge, but I share from experience, from my own and what I've gleaned from others along the way. So the definition of grief is keen mental suffering or distress over affliction or loss. It's a sharp sorrow. It's a painful regret. So grief is inevitable. Ladies, it's inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So grief wrecks us. It breaks us. It nearly drowns us. Grief changes our normal and can shake all that we thought we knew or what we believed. There are 5 general stages of grief, and if you open up any psychology book or Google grief in any possible way, this is what you'll see. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So I am going to share with you guys a couple of journal entries, and let me give you a little bit of background. So I told you that I have 5 boys. Our third, we lost Elijah. We lost Elijah at birth. He was stillborn at 39 weeks. It was a freak accident in my womb, and that was it. And so I had 2 children prior. I had Aiden and Isaac, or my first 2 boys. And so you will hear me reference their names in some of these. I'm going to actually read you my journal entries from like 18 days after Elijah passed, and then at 2 months, and then at 3 months. And what I want you to kind of listen to is you'll actually hear some of the stages of grief, and that's kind of what I wanted to let you guys in on. Some of you, this will be you'll identify very quickly. Yes, that I have experienced before. Some of you may not have experienced a tremendous loss or even, something minor or walked with someone. Maybe this just gives you insight into somebody else that you're going to meet someday. And so maybe a little bit of their feelings and how it works. Grief does not come in straight lines. It's not like you get to, I really thought when I lost the baby, I really thought that I was gonna learn everything I could about these 5 stages, and I was gonna work myself straight through them, and I was gonna be done with this thing. Like, I was over. I was doing it. I was gonna research it. I was gonna do it, and I put my head together. And man, was I wrong. This is not how this thing works. So I went in and out, and I thought I'd mastered it, and I thought I was fine, and then I'd get into a new environment, and everything would change, and I'd be right back where I was. And so that process can be very frustrating. But as you'll hear in the writings, just some of the kind of the crazy thoughts where our hearts go when we're that broken. But you'll also hear me talk to God. And for me, that was a huge thing. I railed. I was angry. I have believed in Jesus since I was a little girl, but I was mad. And so a lot of this stuff that you'll hear, if you hear me writing, you'll hear me, I'm just bargaining with him. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to wrestle with what's happening and how I can't equate this God to what I'm dealing with. So when you hear that, just know that that's how I pray. This is how I talk to God. So I didn't want to throw anybody off in your, as you're listening, you're like, who is she talking to? That's who I'm talking to. So, and you can follow along up here, which is what they have put up for you. So I don't know how to move on from here, 18 days after you, my sweet Elijah. To go back means to have never held you, but to move forward means to never hold you again. In many ways, I want to stay right where I am, somewhere in between, stuck. No, not stuck, choosing to stay here. To be the closest I can be to you. I miss you. My every breath takes effort. I feel so tired. I wake up in the morning still hoping that I was wrong and somehow you're here with me, but you're not. Crawling back into bed doesn't help though. Nothing really does, except to sit and think of you. I laid on the couch today and I pictured you curled up in my arms and the emptiness made my chest hurt. I laid there trying to remember the way your little body felt in mine and the weight of you in my arms. It's phantom weight. That's what I'm feeling. I'm sorry I didn't know that you were gone for so long. The laundry was so unimportant. Forgive me for the thoughts of anger that God would replace Isaac with you. Our second had struggled with seizures, and so we were trying to get him diagnosed at the time, and I was just grappling with a lot. So I wanted both of you desperately. My life will never be the same, and my arms never as full. My heart never as carefree, for you, my son, are not with me. Please, God, help me to remember all of it. The good and the sorrow, the grief and the joy, his beauty and the sorrow of his ashes. Beauty for ashes, strength for fear. God be merciful. God be gracious. Be loving. Be healing. Be my song. Be my salvation and my strength and my peace. Oh, how I need peace. Cover me. Let me feel safe and content in this place. Lead me out. Show me how to move forward. How do I live in and with this burden? It's so hard and it's too heavy. Yet I don't really want the pain to go. I'm afraid of forgetting, of feeling far from my baby, too far from his life and his sweet face. I want to be close to him. I don't know what to do or how I'm supposed to grieve. I'm anxious to move on one minute and desperate to feel the hole he left in my heart the next. Maybe I'm walking in circles in a dense fog. I don't know the weather forecast, but you do, don't you, Lord? So I'm asking for your guidance. Carry me for a while, because I'm not ready to stand yet. Pray about it. Just pray about it. This is everyone's answer when they don't know what to do, or they don't want to hear my confusion or my frustration. It's like slapping a Band-Aid on a wound that anyone can see requires major surgery. I'm so alone, so overwhelmed, and so angry today. The boys just wrestle and fight, each taking turns screaming because they got pinched, hit, kicked, pushed, shoved. I wish I could push or shove something. My emotions are so raw and I'm raging, while on the surface I'm trying to fit my mold, the one that I've always been. So strong, a trooper. Well, I'm not, and I just want to scream to shred these feelings with a shattering force, and then I just want to dissolve into nothing. Oh, how I wish I was still feeling the numbness of shock, that foggy drug of disbelief. The shock wore off, and only pain, frustration, and anger remain. I feel like I'm falling into madness. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm drowning in a sea of sadness. I'm fighting against the distance that God's truths seem to be from me. I hear them out there, echoing. Part of me seeks to take hold of them, but another part of me is angered by those very same truths. After yelling at my boys and then wishing them gone, I crumple into a sobbing mess on the kitchen floor. My two sweet boys come running to comfort. "Mommy, okay?" They ask me as they shower me with kisses and hugs. And sitting there next to them, I apologize for the yelling and being too loud, as Aiden describes it. I tell them how precious they are to me and how Mommy's not mad at you. I'm just sad. I miss Elijah. And that's it. All the screaming and the frustration, it's all because I miss my little baby, and it overwhelms me. The ache inside is too deep. How deep is it? I'm afraid to know. I'm afraid that I'll have to fall farther from the comfort of my previous life before this grief. I'm afraid. So 3 months, everything feels tight. My emotions feel like they're boiling underneath a cover that won't let them out. Imagine French onion soup. Like there's this heavy, melted mess over my heart and emotions. Everything is boiling underneath, but nothing actually makes it to the surface to get evaporated, and the steam never releases. I haven't cried, like really cried for Elijah in a while. A few tears come, but life pushes them aside. Responsibilities don't allow them, and people are tired of watching, especially Mark. So I get mad at myself for crying and mad at Mark for his responses. I'm not done grieving. I'm not done. And I don't know how to tell others that. I need you, God. Why is it so hard for me to say that and to write it? I don't want to need you, but I do. So Mark always has the logical answers, the best responses. Where are the emotional ones? Where are the ones where his heart breaks, where rationality goes flying out the door, shrieking out the windows, just as pain and insanity fled in like smoke from a fire? Those are my responses. Where are his? I don't want the best answer. I don't want him to be rational. I want him to shriek with me, to be washed away in the grief flood of insanity, even for just a moment. He isn't wrong, but neither am I. So So nobody grieves the same. So even as I just shared that with you, there are others of you sitting out there goes, I never felt that. I've never felt that, or I didn't feel that way, or I don't agree, or whatever. And that's part of why I'm sharing this with you, is to explain to you that there's no right or wrong way to do this thing. We just have to do it. So, grief causes brokenness, and it fractures our worlds and our hearts. But in its wake, new beauty can grow. So this beauty grows in the brokenhearted, because they have loved, and those who love them well. So the question is, how do we love grieving people well? So let me share a lighthearted story with you. So the morning after we lost Elijah, I woke up at home, and honestly, I really did think it was a bad dream. Like, I really did wake up and think that this is not my life, this cannot be happening to me. This is not, I'm going to wake up and everything, this is just like a weird bad dream. I woke up the following morning and I can hear people outside of the bedroom, and I have to go to the bathroom. So I get up and I open the door, and my kitchen was off to the side. And I see my mom and my sister in the kitchen, and there are flowers, vases of flowers, literally from one end of my house to the other. And I lost my stuff. I had a moment, and expletives were flying, which was very unlike me, and I was just livid that people sent me flowers. And so I screamed at the top of my lungs, why would you send me something beautiful that I just have to watch die in the vase? And it occurred to me, it's the stupidest tradition ever. Now, that being said, that's me, right? Like, that's what hit my heart. Some of you will be so ministered by flowers. So I scream at the top of my lungs, I said, why doesn't somebody send me chocolate? Send me something I can eat, something to make me feel better. And some of you will identify with that thought. So as I go to the bathroom, I come back outside, and I will never forget, we still talk about this and still roar about this. I watch my mom and my sister with, like arms full of flowers, running full tilt out down the hallway into the trash can. My trash can reeked for weeks of like rotting flowers in this trash can, right? And I laughed every time I walked by it. So my sister-in-law had actually come to the hospital. She was really gracious. She had actually been there through the delivery of Elijah. And so she called that following morning, and she's checking on me, and she's like, okay, I'm going to come down, but like, what does she need? And so, of course, everybody, very quickly informs her, well, don't bring her flowers. And they're like, well, what does she want? She said something about chocolates, so I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and Jessie walks in the side door, and she looks at me. We have a very special relationship anyway. We're a bit sarcastic and a bit edgy, both of us. And so I was sitting at the end of the table, and she looks at me, she goes, there's your flippin' flowers, and she chucks this box of chocolates down the table, and we laughed, and it broke through, and it was like, but that sharing with you, call and ask what someone wants or needs. Don't assume that just because a tradition is what we've done as a culture, that's necessarily what your friends or your loved ones want. So the best thing to do is just to call and ask, have they requested anything? Do they want anything specific? And don't do things just out of gesture because it makes you feel better. Find out what it was that will make their hearts feel better. So that's the flower story. There's a few things that, along with that, not wanting to do things just because somebody else has them. Oftentimes we feel like we need to say something profound. We need to fix this, right? So I'm going to clue you in. You can't fix it. There's nothing that you are going to say to someone who is grieving, whether it's a job loss, whether it's a health loss, whether it's a child loss, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a friendship that's just drifted apart. You can't fix those things, okay? So you can love people well in them, but you can't fix them. So I have found that crying alongside of someone who is grieving means more than anything that you could muster to say. And we want to fix it, so we feel like we need to do something. Having someone sit there and cry with you means you're not crazy. It means that what I'm feeling is hard and it's big. And so some of the most beautiful moments I've had is when I had friends come over and said, I don't know what to say. And they just sat there and cried. And that meant everything, because I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not the only one crying. Like, you're not going to make me cry more than I've already cried. You don't have that much power, even if I love you. Okay? So that's not going to make them. And a lot of times people get very worried about saying people's names, especially after they're gone. Right? Like, I don't want to say their name, because if I say their name, then it's like, no. When you say Elijah's name, that means he existed. That means I'm not nuts. Like, he didn't just evaporate. You know, your baby's name, like our miscarriage, and here's another, okay, we're a little weird. So any of you that are newly going through miscarriage, I will preface this by saying, Mark and I are weird. But when our children came back to us and said, we know Elijah's name, but there was a baby before Aiden. And I said, yes. I said, there was a baby. And I said, but we didn't know if it was a boy baby or a girl baby. And they're like, but it's another sibling. I said, yes, it is. And I said, well, and so Mark goes, Speck. We shall call the baby Speck. Because we didn't know, and it was this tiny little baby, you know, but my boys still refer to their sibling Speck. Explain that in the grocery line. But for us, that was, you know, there was a point to it. So there was, and I honestly didn't grieve as hard for Speck at the time, and I grieved it a second time after Elijah, because I understood what I lost a little bit more. And so there's different waves of different things as you go. One more thing that was like my little irk. Don't say you're sorry. I need somebody to say I'm sorry, and I had no filter. Those of you that are grieving will know this. You like lose a part of your leg. So I was standing in a grocery line, somebody's like, you know, how many kids do you have? Oh. So they're sitting there and they see the 4, and I say 5. And they're counting 4. And it was like, my husband very graciously, because he's much more gracious than I was, stepped in and said, oh, we lost one. And they went, oh, I'm sorry. And they walked away, and I looked at Mark, and I was like, did they kill my baby? He's like, stop, you can't say that to people. And I was like, no, I'm not going to say it, but it's the thought. Like, what are you sorry for? Like, you had no responsibility in that. And so there's a piece of it. So instead of saying I'm sorry and leaving it, what are you sorry for? Like, what is it that we're expressing in that moment? So I have found this phrase to work in every situation. So you can write it down if you want. I'm sorry your heart is hurting so badly. Right? That's what we're sorry for. I'm sorry that I can't fix this and make you feel better. I'm sorry that whatever it is, but give it a name. More than just I'm sorry, like someone tripped. Like, oh, sorry. You know, like our hearts are worth more than that to each other. So there are some traits, and you have these on the table in your handouts. So I wanted to send them with you as you go. But there's also some, you'll see on the back, like the best things to say and the worst things to say. Because sometimes we just want to avoid re-wounding people, right? Like sometimes it's not even not knowing the best thing, but just know not to say that, okay? So you guys can take those with you, and that's like really valuable. Tuck it somewhere, because like I said, grief is inevitable. So if you know you have it somewhere, you can always pull it out and refresh it. But the best traits are supportive, but not trying to fix it. The best traits about people are about their feelings. How are you feeling today? You know, it's okay. That gives us permission to express to each other how we're feeling today. And you may say, I don't know how I'm feeling, and that's okay too, but it's how you're feeling. The best traits of a supportive person are non-active. They're not telling someone what to do. Okay, you may, in your own stress, in your own, like, just take a walk outside. Why don't you do this or that? That may not be how that person wants to do it, but they don't have the energy to tell you that. And so we want to be very careful not to instruct others on how to grieve, how to do their process. Making suggestions that, would you like to? How would you feel about? Does that sound good to you? And giving them the permission to say no. Always give the permission for them to say no. That's not what I want. That's not what I need. Admitting that you cannot make it better. It's the best thing in the world. Validating that I know I can't fix you. I can't fix this. Not asking for something or someone to change the way that they feel. I just think you should look at it this way. Let's silver lining it. You can't silver line grief. It's not helpful, it's hurtful. You recognize the loss. I understand, or I recognize that you are hurting because of this. Just announcing it and stating that. And there's no time limit on grief. This was very hard. I had lots of friends that came to me, especially we got pregnant with Judah very quickly. About 3 months after I lost Elijah, I was pregnant again. And I was shocked. There was a part of me that was okay with being pregnant and a part of me that was absolutely terrified. And I waffled back and forth between those emotions for the entire pregnancy. Moments that the baby didn't move and I was like, move. And then moments where the baby did move and I was like, stop moving because I don't want you, I want him. Okay? It's a hard thing. So but there's no time limit. So I had one lady that she loved me. She was a mentor mom in a Mops group, and she loved me, but she walked up to me and found out I was pregnant, and she said, so does this mean you're over Elijah? And I just stood there and looked at her, and I was like, no. You don't get over a person. So but the time losses or time limits, people are like, why do you keep reopening it? The anniversary would come. So my boy would be 13 just this last September. And there are certain ones that are easier and certain ones that are harder. 13 rocked me a bit. 13 was hard. That's a stage. It's a marker. But there's not a time loss. My birthday will always be hard for me because I want all my people. You want all your people to celebrate with you on your birthday, and that's not my people. So he's not all here. So there will always be those things that are hard. And so as we love others, you kind of have to change because we're also grieving ourselves, right? We're grieving the people we used to be before this happened to us, whatever the grief is, whatever the loss is. I want to be that girl again. That girl was way more fun, So grief reveals beauty in unexpected places. And beauty is found in a heart that has been broken into 1,000 pieces because it has lost something of value. However, if this heart chooses to continue to struggle, if this heart fights to trust and to forgive, if it desperately holds on to hope and searches for a purpose, it will find joy eventually. Beauty is also found in the compassionate hearts of those that choose to wade into the grief waters with the brokenhearted. So the last thing I want to talk to you guys is this one you might not like. Maybe your loss isn't just about you. Refuse to let the pain be wasted. And instead of asking why, maybe you change the question to, for what purpose? See, I remember at different points in my life wondering what all of this was for. What was it about me that grief seemed to loom so closely? Why me? I was extremely tired of being that girl, the one with the tragedy, the one with the drama all the time. And there were periods of time that I didn't want to be in community with people. When people asked how I was, I lied and said, I'm fine. I wasn't. But I didn't want to watch the discomfort on their faces. I felt even more alone. See, people wanted me to be okay, to be back to my old self. My sadness made them uncomfortable, And looking back now, I understand that most people really don't know what to say. So instead of saying something loving, we say something awkward or wrong. We avoid, we look at the ground and just stick to really surface. Hello. Just scoot past. I too have been guilty of this, so don't think that you're the only one. So my part to answer the question of for what purpose for my world has come from this. Because of my experiences and how alone I felt through most of them, I don't want others to experience grief alone. I have been honored to sit with grieving women and individuals. I have sat with a mom about to deliver her stillborn son and answered her questions. I have walked with numerous people in the loss of their own children. I've been blessed with conversations at grocery stores and parks and schools and Bible study and with the friend of a friend who wants to know how to help their friend. I am refusing to let my grief be wasted. I have become more compassionate and I have developed a deep empathy. God has changed me through all of this. I love deeper and I sacrifice more easily. I forgive often and I can find something of beauty in almost any situation. Some of the beauty has been found in the tear shed by a friend as they listen to my broken heart. So today, I want you to be those moments of beauty for each other. This is a room full of hearts. And these hearts were designed to be loved and to love by the author of all love. All hearts have felt loss or will one day. So we can be part of a beautiful rebuilding together. A purposeful refusal to let the pain be wasted. Our hearts can choose to be, instead of comfortable, comfort able. You are able to bring somebody else comfort. And you are able to demonstrate compassion and extravagant love. Thank you.